So this is week 3, and what we're going to be working on today is levels and grids, and then what we'll probably do is add some structural members to the design. Our learning objectives for today is to actually link or import CAD files, link Revit models to our project. We can add levels to define the floor and floor heights, copy and monitor elements from other models. And then once we do that, we can start setting up like our structural grids and levels and columns and things like that. So that's kind of the plan. There's a lot that we're going to be getting done today, but I don't think it's too much for anybody. So one thing to understand, which isn't very hard, especially if you've been around it for a while, structural projects are started normally after the architectural design is already underway. They're sometimes they're kind of simultaneous, but we are definitely getting our design driven from the architectural end. Now, there are a couple exceptions to that, like bridge work and some other designs can sometimes be an exception, but for the most part, it's coming from that. So, CAD or Revit models can be linked to the project. And mind you, there's certain things that are started on probably the civil engineering or structural engineering side, maybe for part of the site design and things like that that are going to go into the Revit model. And then there's certain things structural wise that are coming off the architectural side and going into the civil side and all that. So you might have multiple ways that this is going, but a lot of times, what we're going to do is we're going to make an assumption that what we're building is kind of already coming from the architectural side for this kind of example. A couple things to understand about the different ways you can bring a file in, and this is going to be important for class this week because we're going to kind of break it down from another approach, is the idea of linked files and imported files. So linked files become part of the project, but they're still connected to the original file. And so if you have one architectural file that's kind of being worked, and then you have a structural file for the structural group, you've got an MEP file, you got things like that, they can be driven from that one original file, and yet everything in their own, like the structural group's own project is concentrating with what they're doing, but if there's some change on the architectural end, it feeds into their design so they know how to adjust to it. Think of it a little bit like an XREF, and we're going to show a couple different ways that can work and some of the setups and the BIM portion of that. We'll talk about that a little bit in class. Imported files, you're kind of getting it already done, and then it's dumped over to you. So once you bring that file in, there's no link back and for updates and all that. So in that case, it's kind of a one-way street. You're not getting this connection and all that. And so think of that like blocks if you're messing around in AutoCAD. The other thing too is links can be nested. So you can have one link that is a nest, has things in it that are nested to another link, and because it's looking at that file, and it will, if there's already things that file is looking at, those will show up as well. The other thing is you have different ways to look at this. So a relative path type, it's going to look for that in a specific area in a root folder, and if it doesn't necessarily show up in that original folder, it'll kind of start looking other places, and there's a kind of a hierarchy on how it looks for those files, where when you're looking at like an absolute, if it's not at the specific address, it's not going to find that Revit file. So sometimes you want that style, look for it here, because if you happen to find it somewhere else, that's not the version that we want, and we'll cover that a little bit later. So the way you bring this in is pretty easy. One, you start your own project. And once you start your own project, you can come in, and normally you like to kind of start with an initial view. I normally start with a 3D view to place it in because we're dealing with 3D models. But if you're dealing with something like CAD or whatever, just a 2D CAD file of a floor plan or something, then you would use a 2D view in that case. Where we're going to look is under the Insert tab. That's where you can actually find the link or the import. We're going to link, and then you link to the file in CAD or Revit or whatever, and then set things up. So if you're looking for it, to first set up your view, you would go to the View tab, and then on the ribbon hit 3D View. It would set up the 3D view, and then you would come over. By the way, you can check and double check that it is a 3D view you're looking at if you get the little view icon in the corner. And then you'll come over to the Insert tab, and here's all the things. So we can import our files here over in this panel, but in this panel is our link files, and we can come in and link into our Revit file right here. Once we pick it, it's going to come in, and everything else is pretty well set up. Normally when you bring it in, though, you tend to like to come in and you want to differentiate that from design stuff that you're doing in your own. And so what you're going to do is you'll normally come in and like do a graphic override, and any of the imported stuff you'll bring it in with a halftone look. So it's kind of grays it out as far as the design goes. And that's not very hard to do. You select the link that you come in. If you right click, override graphics in view by category, and then you can go ahead and set it to halftone. So it's not that bad. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, and so here's kind of the steps that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to come in and start a new Revit file using a structural template, not an architectural one, and then in that I'll create a new 3D view. I'll go ahead and insert a file. I'm just using this one, this kind of generic one that they have. I'm going to insert that. The next thing I want to do is pin it, because, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we're in the thing, but just so you understand that this is different than kind of how we design certain things on the civil end, where this is not necessarily anchored down yet. They're much less worried about geolocations and things like that during their process, and so us locking this in at a certain location is going to be slightly different, and we'll talk about that. We'll pin it, and then I'm going to set the views to halftone. So that's kind of the game plan. So let me get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up Revit and let you look at it. Okay, so I've started up Revit. This is the model that I'm actually going to be using to link. Let me go ahead and open it right now just so you can look. So this is the architectural model. You'll notice it's got a few more bells and whistles than what I'm worried about right now. It's just this urban house design. If you look at each of the floors, they have different, they have like furniture, they have stairwells, they have things like that, and much less worried about where the toilet is as opposed to anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this out, and so I can go to File, hit Close. That's going to close it out. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to start a new model, and so I'll come over here. I want to start a new project. I'm going to have this based on a structural template, which will load certain things preset, and I'll hit OK, and it'll take a second, it'll start up. And this is my file. This is the one that I'm going to be designing the structure and all for that building. And so what I can do is I can come over and I'm going to go to the views. So if I go to view right here and I go to 3D view, I'll just create a little 3D view. It's this little house, click on it, there you go. But it lets me see I already have a couple levels created. I've got analytical model as well as the base floor plans, things, structural plans, and all that. And then over here, if you look in my project browser, here's my 3D view. And if I want to, I can rename it. So I can come in here and call it my new view. Once I do that, it's going to actually save that one. So if I come up and create another 3D view, it's going to come in it, and right now it looks at the same position. But if I come over here, let me flip this one around. So there's my one, and then here's my other, and so those are the different things on your settings. So now that I have that, let me come over. I will come over to insert, and I'll go to link Revit, and then I'll go find that file. Here it is, iUrban House. There it is. And so I can come in and hit open, and it's going to take a little while to load. Now this looks slightly different. It's like, whoa, what happened to all those things? Remember, when you have a certain project that you're doing, it's going to use, it's going to look slightly different because of what you're trying to do. So the computer, the template turned off a few things on here, so I can't see it. So I can't see the stairs. I can see the floors, but I can't see like the couches and all that. You can change those custom things later. So now this is in here. If I actually want to, I can move this all over. So I can slide this around. I can move this. I don't necessarily want to, but let me just show you. If I click this, I can move it, more centered on my thing. It doesn't make a difference because it's not tied in anything geolocation wise right now. If I select it though, and I come to the modify panel, I can pin it, and then that will lock this in, so I can't move it anymore. Even if I go to a different view, see, I can't move it because it's pinned. So now that I have it pinned, it looks pretty good, but in this view, if I'm going to be working on this area, if I want to put a wall or something structural, I want it to look slightly different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and I want this to look different than my model. And so if I right click, one of the options I can do is override graphics in view, and then I'll just pick by category, and then right here I'll go halftone, hit OK. And so now it's there, I can see it, but I can definitely tell it's different than everything else because it's got this halftone view. Let me show you on the east view right here. So once again, you pin in one view, you pin in all of them. But if I select, right click, override graphics in view by category, then I can pick halftone, hit OK, and it's going to kind of gray out. And here's where you can really tell. So if you look right here, these are the two levels that were automatically created when I created my template, my new project file from the template. These are the levels that were created already in the other file. And you can see how these stand out more than the grayscale one. So I can tell the difference between my linked file and my current file.